Welcome back to the Social Equity in Missouri Cannabis podcast. I'm your host, David Huckkins. Today, we're looking past the headlines at the unvarnished truth of the 26 market, from micro businesses to the vendors and service providers keeping this industry moving. Whether you're an operator or just following the money, here is what you need to know about the players and the policies shaping Missouri right now. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Let's get into it. I'm here with Jeff Khoshaba. He's a microbusiness licensee, and he's trying to get things figured out where he's from. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, Jeff, tell us about what you're doing right now, who you are, what you got going on. Tell people how they can get in touch with you. If you got a website, let us know all the deets. What's up, my brother?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, David. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I'm Jeff Khoshaba, a.k.a. Jay Kashaba. I am the founder of Kashaba Craft. We are a small batch craft cultivator in the state of Michigan. We're actually technically not a micro business licensee. We were going to do that license, but there was sort of some difficulty if we ever wanted to expand beyond that. We were kind of trapped in that license. So we ended up just building a small cultivation facility, which is the size of a micro facility because that's all we had the capital to be able to build. But it's actually a Class C license. So it gives us the ability to down the road add on additional capacity. We're in Benton Harbor, Michigan. I've been a cultivator for probably about 18 years now. I actually started a little bit before that, but it was, as a teenager, inconsistently, throwing a plant in the ground here and there, not consistently, growing. But so for the last, probably roughly
You
18
delinquent.
years, yeah, we were not following the rules. We started doing that and selling cannabis way back in the Prohibition days, in the 90s. And always had a passion for the plant. I actually started my first cannabis business in Colorado in 2009. It was called Tree of Life Alternative Medicine. I started it in Denver, then we got kind of regulated out of business. Long story there. We ended up moving it up to the mountains to Netherlands. Then when they passed regulations, I was not prepared to comply or raise capital to be able to do all the things that we needed to do to get their license. So I sold the business, came back to Michigan, continued cultivating, went back to school, and have steadily remained a caregiver in the Michigan medical marijuana program, for many years. And a few years back, I founded Kashaba Craft, which was sort of always my plan to open another cannabis business. But I knew, years ago, I didn't really have the business acumen yet or the access to capital. And I wasn't even a good grower yet. I thought I was, but, I wasn't. And so
that's all relevant, though, too. You know what I mean? If you're comparing what you're growing to the brickweed that we used to get back in the day, it's probably way better than that.
It was amazing. No, it was. And that's part of why I thought I was,
Right, exactly.
Right.
But not craft quality cannabis like we're thinking of today.
Right. Actually, some of it was like legit amazing fire. I had incredible genetics. I wish I had those genetics now. I would trade everything I have now for those genetics to have them back and healthy. So I actually did grow a lot of really good flower. I grew some really bad flower. It was inconsistent. Yields were terrible. Anyways, so I kept sort of, honing the craft and dialing in and learning about business, and then decided it was time to launch Kashaba Craft here in Michigan. So like I say, we're a small batch cultivator. We actually, after several years of trying to scrape together the money and build a compliant adult use facility under the Michigan regulatory system, we actually yesterday just got our certificate of occupancy on that. So the new facility is approved. We just now have to have the state come out and do their final inspections. And so hopefully within a few weeks to maybe 30, 45 days max, we'll have plants in the new building and be cultivating there. In the meanwhile, I've been a caregiver in the medical program, and I've been a tribal cannabis supplier through the Native American tribe locally here. The Pokagon Band of the Potawatomi tribe has their own sovereign land here and their own regulatory system. And so I actually applied for a license through them and got approved. And so for the last 2 years have been supplying their Rolling Ember store down in New Buffalo, Michigan, which is kind of like the new Midwest mecca of cannabis. It's on the border of Indiana. It's close to Chicago, and there's like 25 dispensaries, massive dispensaries in this tiny little town that does more out-of-state business than probably anywhere in the world. The volume there is staggering. So we're in one of those stores. We got to get our brand out there and in the market and kind of prove out our concept that, look, we have really high-quality flower that still commands, a really high pricing despite average prices, rock bottom. In recent years, they've fallen off a cliff, wholesale prices. We still get good enough pricing to be a viable business. And once we proved that, we were able to get a little bit more investment capital in and get our facility finally finished. So that's about where we're at, today now, taking Kashaba Craft, our brand. We do... I don't know if you can really see, probably good on the video, but
that looks nice. Choice.
Small batches of just super frosty, flavorful, beautiful flowers, with a focus on doing quality over everything, even at the expense of yield and efficiency. We're trying to bring out the fullest expression of the plant, of each genetic.
So, is there any way possible you could email me some of that bud? It looks delicious.
Probably not email. It's funny because now the hemp people are sending THCA flower all over the country.
Anywhere, yeah. And buying it from anywhere.
Yes, and that makes me nervous. In hindsight, if I knew that everybody was going to be allowed to do that, I might have went that route instead, because it would have required a tiny fraction of the investment and the time. We would have been doing that this last 3-4 years, but
a tiny fraction of the oversight also from the state and the federal government.
Basically none of the oversight, none of the extra tax. Those guys have had a very good few years, and I'm a little bit jealous, to be honest, but it was also a big risk. I'm shocked that they let it go on to this extent for so long. I don't have a problem with them doing them. I just didn't want to get my doors kicked in. I've been raided before. I've lived through that terror, and I don't didn't want to end up going in jail. And it just yesterday or the day before, where it is, the feds just hit a huge hemp THCA distro in California and confiscated millions of dollars in products. There's possibly a big case coming down, so it looks like they might be cracking down on some of these people. So.
What was their excuse for cracking down on them? Did they?
I don't think they gave an official reason. I suspect
they don't need one, right? It's the government.
They do whatever they want. They're the feds.
Right.
They're not going to be transparent a lot of the times with their why and their rationale. You just have the goon squad kicking in the doors all of a sudden. But I suspect it's because, and not to tell on anybody, but it's an open secret in the industry that a lot of those THCA test numbers, just like in the regular adult regulated use market, a lot of those numbers are not accurate. And so a lot of that THCA flower is really just high THC flower. And if, people get busted with it and the cops test it, it is testing over 0.3% Delta 9. So it would be considered, regular
cannabis.
THC, cannabis, drug cannabis. And
it's all cannabis, by the way. Hemp
it's all
cannabis.
The same plant. I hate that there's any distinction. I hate that there's 50 different regulatory systems.
To me, there is a distinction, but that's because of the way I grew up. Hemp was the stuff that was grown in the ditches when I was a kid in Iowa, and it was all left over from when they were growing hemp during the war to make rope.
Right.
So to me, hemp is like not a product that you use for necessarily medicinal purposes, but it's for agriculture, it's for fiber, it's for feed, for animals, for rope, for clothes, paper, whatever.
Yes. And I
to me, it's still cannabis, but it's hemp because it's not used for medicinal or smoking purposes or
Yes, no, that's not what I meant. I meant the distinction between these different regulatory systems that are treating the exact same type of cannabis as different products.
For sure.
Hemp is hemp, and is totally different and should not be subject to the regulation that intoxicating cannabis is, but they're calling intoxicating cannabis hemp, and that's confusing for people. And
It is.
I hate that it's a mess and there's so much uncertainty. In my mind, cannabis should be hardly regulated, tested for safety, don't sell it to kids, but we should be able to ship anywhere that it's legal. We shouldn't have to track every plant with a plastic tag in this big system. It's a mess. And all this extra tax for a plant that's not harming anyone is stupid to me. But it is what it is, and we love the plant. And we want to be able to create it and share it with the world. So, we're willing to jump through the hoops and do it the quote-unquote right way.
Right. I don't remember how it is that who it was that I was following somebody's thread on LinkedIn, and they said, "Oh, I got some of that Kashaba, and it was fire." And I was like, "That was some of the best that was some great craft cannabis." And I was like, "Oh, I need to talk to this guy." And that's kind of what prompted me to reach out to you, because in the micro business space here in Missouri, I'm going to talk a little bit about how micro business works in Missouri. So specifically it's a B2B. So micro businesses can only do business with other micro businesses. We can't do business with the comprehensive guys. We can't have any of those big name brands, Cookies, Proper, that other stuff. It's all just going to be coming from the micros. So that is very limiting. People are, a lot of times they like their brand, they like their Vivid, or they like whatever it is that they like. And it's hard to get into this craft cannabis space because you hit on this a little bit earlier. People want that good weed, but a lot of times they don't want to pay that extra price. And an extra price comes with that craft cannabis because of the way that it's grown and the way that it's manufactured. It's got a lot more THC, or not THC, TLC. And the upcare and the bringing and the cure and the getting it to market properly without it being smashed up in a bag or something. Man, that's so disappointing when I go to a comprehensive facility and I'm trying to get that gas and I open it up and it just doesn't smell good, and it's just you can't even see any crystals on it. They probably have, but they've been all mashed in. It's just over processed. All dry. A lot of times it's way too dry. Like you pinch it and it just like crumbles into dust. A lot of times I have to take it home and finish curing it myself. Super disappointing. And in the micro space here in Missouri, that's how we have to compete, because our growers are limited to 250 flowering plants at a time, which is a tiny drop in the bucket what these comprehensive guys can do. They can have like thousands of feet of growing canopy.
Right. So
the only way that we can really compete is by, in my mind, is having stuff that you're not going to find, having product that you're not going to be able to find in the comprehensive facilities. That's what's going to bring the customers in. People that are looking for that connoisseur experience. They want that fire, that gas. They can come in and they can get it in my dispensary once I have it open. The problem is I've sampled some of the product from the micros out here, and it is not craft quality cannabis. Some of it's pretty good. I did sample one grower's cannabis. They're growing aeroponically, and it was really good. I would say that was craft quality cannabis. And it doesn't necessarily mean that's because they were growing aquaponically. That was just an anecdotal thing that I threw out there. So that's the challenges in a nutshell that we're running into in Missouri, besides all the other stuff. Like, when you're in a cannabis business, you don't qualify for federal loans and grants and small business administration help, because it's still a federally illegal substance. Even when they bring it, reschedule it to Schedule 3, it's still, and I think that's going to screw things up even worse than it is right now, personally. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But so anyway, that's why I wanted to reach out to you, and that's what I was hoping we could kind of focus on this call, was talking about craft cannabis. So I think a lot of people have the misconception that craft means small batch. That is not what that means at all, in my mind. Small batch can be craft cannabis, but you can also grow craft cannabis in a large scale facility as well.
Yes, so I don't think there's any like certain size that designates whether it's craft or not. Craft to me is much more about the process, the hands-on, individualized, specialized attention for each genetic. Now you are going to see craft quality in small batches way more often than you're going to see it from large facilities, just because most of the large facilities do not have a craft focus, despite the fact that a lot of them love to throw craft on their label or call their weed craft cannabis. There's tons of companies, both big and small, that call it craft cannabis, and yet what's craft about their process? They treat every single genetic the same way. They only grow genetics that fit and function within their system. They run strictly the SOPs that their nutrient company gave to them. They're doing the exact same thing every other large grower is doing. They're overly sterilizing everything, which I get. You have to keep a sterile facility,
For sure. Yeah.
be able to pass testing. But their fear of failure leads them to over sanitize everything, and I think that has an adverse effect on quality. And then, particularly, a lot of them are remediating or even pre-mediating because they're worried they might fail, so they just remediate all of the product to be sure that it does pass. And, I've never had product remediated. I'm not an expert on that. Some people say it can be done without harming the product at all. But I think the general consensus is that you're killing terpenes and volatile compounds off. And the way they do it, many times, it's impossible that volatile compounds are not being destroyed in the process because they are so delicate. So to me, craft means trying to bring, regardless of if you're growing one plant or 10,000 plants, trying to bring out the fullest expression of that plant. And that's not the focus of most facilities. They want to grow good weed, but they want to get the biggest yield for the lowest cost in the most efficient manner with the fewest touch points
And the
throughout
highest
process.
THC.
And the highest THC. There's this ridiculous obsession with the THC number. I think it's starting to change, at least on the connoisseur end of the market. A lot of the best-selling and highest-selling price point flower isn't necessarily high THC. Flower that's winning competitions is not necessarily high THC flower. Connoisseurs are going for flavor and effect. And that's the other difference, too. There's a lot of 30% THC flower on the market that's very bland. It has no flavor. And the high is very generic. It's just sort of a boring, basic high versus, cannabis that's rich in terpenes and volatile sulfur compounds and all of the many different molecules that exist within the cannabis plant in small amounts. But if you nurture the plant and get them to express, that all feeds into an entourage effect that is a much more pleasant, cerebral, often full body. It might be energetic, it might be sedative, but it's bringing out those extra aspects of the experience versus just that sort of THC high. So that's what craft means to me. Dialing in each genetic, being willing to grow stuff that doesn't fit in your system, but growing it because you think it's super high quality and special. And we're all limited on doing it by the economics. I can't grow 16-week hazes that barely produce any flower. It's also going to be low THC. It's going to be very hard to sell. So we can't hit that out of the market, but we are looking to build those markets. As we come to market and build our brand out and get people truly understanding quality and loving what we do, we then have the credibility in the market to say, hey, this is going to cost a little bit more. It might not be as pretty as some of the other flowers visually. It might not have as high of a THC number, but wait till you taste this and experience the difference. And we are going to grow some more difficult to grow, hard to grow plants, low yielding plants, long flowering varieties, so we can show people how diverse and amazing the cannabis species is. There's every effect, flavor, smell you can imagine in the cannabis kingdom, and we're currently only getting sort of a small, glimpse into that window that's much larger. So that's how I want to see craft develop into truly exotic, not just they throw that word around, but actual exotic, rare, incredible cannabis.
Well said. I think that a lot of times in the comprehensive market, another thing that they're doing is they're absolutely not only are they picking genetics that are going to be, high THC, and that's probably the most important quality when it finishes anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also looking for plants that are going to mature in 8 or 9 weeks
Fast
because they got to get
plants,
that in and out as quick as possible. They want to make that dollar.
big yielders.
Yeah, yeah, big yield. And that's kind of the opposite of how it kind of works in the craft space a lot of times. Like you said, you're looking for the genetics that are going to do what you want. Maybe it's going to take a little bit longer to flower. It's not going to produce maybe as big of buds, but the quality is going to be much better. The taste, we had the conversation the other day, and I was like, I don't need to smoke it to know if I'm going to like it. I need to smell it first. And then my brain is going to know if it's the right thing or not. So once you figure out your terpenes and how different terpenes going to affect you when you smoke them, that's when you're gonna really start to enjoy your smoking experience a lot better. You also touched on something about judges in these competitions, not necessarily the judges, but them picking plants that aren't necessarily the high THC. They might be lower THC, and I think that's because the judges are connoisseurs. You know what I mean? They know what's gonna work and what's not gonna work, and what's good stuff and what's not good stuff. And they might pick I don't even look at the THC percentage anymore when I just want to smell it. If I can't smell it, I probably don't want to buy it.
100%.
And that was it's true back in the day as it was. I mean, the guy that taught me how to find good weed back when we were all smoking that commercial and that brick weed from South America or wherever it was coming from was leave it rolled up in the baggie, and can you smell it through the bag? That's good weed. If you can smell it through the bag, that's good weed, So, and it's still as true today as it was back then. And you're right. A lot of times you smoke this weed and it's all got just kind of a generic high to it. It's not that laughy body, cerebral, I want to have a good time and eat a lot of pizza and watch some stupid movie and laugh like an idiot with my friends, It's all just kind of that, I'm high. Yeah. It's kind of disappointing these days. Another thing you touched on was remediation. So I think I want to say what I think you meant, and then you can tell me if I'm right or not. So a lot of times when these growers have something and it gets tested, maybe it's got a little bit of mold or it's got some of this or some of that, the state will say, no, you can't sell that unless it's gone through a remediation process to fix whatever's wrong with it. So a lot of times if it's mold, they fix that with different things. Radiation is one way they fix it. Ozone is another way, and those are both very harmful to people if they're near them when that's going off. But what it doesn't fix is if it's mold that's in there, mold produces toxins. You may kill the mold, but that mold, it's like us. It eats and then it poops, and all that poop that comes out of the bacteria or the mold or whatever, it's also toxic. And I don't want to smoke anything that's been through remediation personally. If it had failed when it first got tested, that's not something. I think they should clearly disclose that on the label, so you know what I mean, so people could make that choice.
Right. There's been a push for that. I doubt it'll happen because so much of the testing rules that we have too are pushed by the remediation equipment manufacturers. That's why that's a big part of anyways why we have such stringent aspergillus testing requirements in most states. Now aspergillus can be dangerous. There's not really a lot of evidence that anybody's been harmed from smoking it. It's more of a immunocompromised people, And yet they'll say, well, it's so dangerous, we can't have that because it's everywhere in nature. It's ubiquitous. If you walk outside, you are almost anywhere, especially in any kind of yard or wooded area, because it thrives in decomposing organic matter. You're breathing in aspergillus. And I saw the great point made that, doctors don't tell immunocompromised people, oh, don't go in your garden. Often they say, hey, this is therapeutic, grow some vegetables and
True.
that sort of thing. So the health risk is overblown, but because they know it's so common, lots and lots of flower is going to fail for aspergillus that is otherwise completely beautiful, perfect flower, because it's not like with other molds where it has to be actively growing on there and there has to be a certain amount of it. They have thresholds, usually somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 colony-forming units of yeast mold bacteria would be allowable under most testing regimes. Aspergillus, if there's one dead spore, the whole crop fails. And that was pushed by the remediation companies that want everything to go through their radiation chambers. They want to be able to sell units and push that on people. So, so the trick is you got to keep, your grow super clean and grow clean product from the beginning. The downside is the tests don't differentiate between beneficial bacteria and harmful bacteria, because there are beneficial bacteria that you can use on the plants to make sure bad bacteria doesn't grow on them, to make sure pests don't occupy the plants, to help the general health of the plant. And they're not in any way harmful to humans. Our body's covered in beneficial bacteria. The testing rules are kind of, not super sophisticated. They were well-intentioned and slammed through to make sure people aren't getting moldy cannabis or anything that's going to harm them. And that's good. But, it's sort of led to there being a lot of remediated product on the market, and no one knows when it's been remediated. There's no real proof that it's harmful to consume remediated product, and especially because there's a million different ways to do it. But most of it is radiation. I would prefer not to consume cannabis that's been irradiated.
Right.
But we do know for sure it's definitely at a bare minimum, even if it's completely safe, it's lowering the quality of that cannabis. It's oxidizing it, so you're losing terpenes and other volatile compounds that contribute to the smell, the flavor, and then ultimately the effect of the cannabis. So it's unfortunate. We just have to keep facilities super, super clean. Even in my caregiver grow, we've passed for, almost everything we've sent through, and then we have to go through the same testing requirements that the state has for everyone to be able to participate in the tribal system. The only thing we've ever failed for was aspergillus, which is because, like I said, there could be one spore that blows in after the product's already even dry, and you fail for it. And so we had to just junk those batches because we can't send them to the store then. So you have to be super careful as a cultivator, particularly like with us, we grow in soil. We use organic amendments. That's part of our craft process to bring out the fullest flavors and aroma and quality. But also, we have to make sure we're super careful that we're sterilizing the air and all of the surfaces and making sure it's an environment where bad bacteria can't grow, and that we have good bacteria in the soil, taking care of our root system, building a food web, and out-competing any bad bacterias or molds like aspergillus, and not giving them the chance to set up and take root. But it's actually one of the more complicated aspects of growing in the legal market is making sure you're still getting an amazing product that is absolutely clean of any mold. It's not easy. You have to be very vigilant.
I'm in a really weird space being a micro business because all the comprehensive facilities here, I feel like, they see us as competition, and they would not mind if we failed. In fact, I think they go out of their way sometimes to make it difficult for us to see that we fail. And we also don't, and we're small batch, but we're not part of the legacy market either. Those guys reject us too. The comprehensive guys reject us. There's not much community here for me. I'm getting hate from all sides, no matter where I turn.
I feel you.
These cannabis communities are brutal, and the people that I was friends with yesterday may hate my guts today.
It's awful.
Yeah, it is. It's really terrible.
Very
I did.
clicky.
I did think while you were talking, and you said you were growing in soil. I did remember that there is another micro business grow here that does bring the fire. Some of the best weed I've ever smoked in my life, in fact, and they're doing living soil.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah,
living
so
soil.
so do we. So, but we don't do
Oh
no-till.
yeah.
This is how I differentiate. And the no-till guys will say that we're not really living soil because we don't do no-till. No-till is great. I have a ton of respect for those guys, but it's very hard to consistently grow a wide variety of strains to their fullest potential in that while also passing testing clean. And, it's very slow to react. If you have a deficiency, sometimes very hard to correct because you have to amend the soil. It takes time for microbes to break everything down and make sure the plant's taking in whatever it was lacking. So you're constantly having to test the soil too and see, what nutrients are there available in abundance and which are low, where you're going to have deficiencies and problems. So it is living soil. We grow in soil and we brew teas with beneficial bacteria, microbes, and cultivate, a food web, a living web of bacteria in the soil that helps colonize the root systems and break down nutrients and organic matter and make it available as food to the plant. They also help, and I'm not the best one to describe the process, it's very scientific, but in their process of breaking down nutrients, they create other compounds that aid in the creation of other secondary metabolites like volatile sulfur compounds that give the aroma and flavor to cannabis. So they help to bring out compounds that are not going to be abundant without them. So they bring a complexity of flavor to the plant. That's why I love living soil cannabis. But we do individual containers and swap them out each harvest. We do not continue to grow in undisturbed, untilled big plots of soil. We are hoping to, in the new facility, switch to reusing all of our soil because soil is very expensive and we could be much more eco-friendly and save a lot of money if we reuse our soil. But what we're not going to do is continue to just plant in the exact same pots of soil or beds. We are going to each harvest swap out that soil, put it back, somewhere, which is one of the things we're figuring out to do it without contaminating the facility and having issues, but have somewhere on site where we will rebake, sort of recompost all that soil. So what we'll do is take that soil, break it all back down with the root balls and pile that up and add in the bacterias to rebake it and break it down and cook it. We're going to also compost all of our waste, all of our stems, all of our leaves from deleafing, all of the trim that is not frosty that wouldn't be used for extraction or anything like that. We're going to compost all of that and then re-add that into our soil and reuse that soil. So we'll constantly be adding new microbes and having living soil. We'll be reusing our soil and being eco-friendly, but it still won't ever be, I don't want to say ever, but we have no plans to go no-till, if that makes sense.
Sure. Have you ever heard of a brand called Vibe?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think I'm specifically familiar with
I'm
it.
gonna. I don't normally like to blow shade, but um, I bought some cannabis flower, like buds, in a jar. Came in a jar, and I had never tried their product before. It was a little bit pricey, so I was like, "Well, I'm gonna try this. Everybody says it's good. I think I'll smoke this." So I tried some, and immediately after smoking, I became physically ill. I vomited, and I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"Oh, yeah, I don't know if that was related to that cannabis or something else that happened." Until I accidentally smoked some more. Somebody gave me a pre-roll from them. I didn't know it was Vibe until I smoked it, and I had the exact same effect the second time. Made me vomit. I don't know what was in it, or a lot of people
Interesting.
smoke it and enjoy it and don't have that problem, but to me, it did not sit well. And I
Hmm.
think that those kind of stories, coupled with the kind of things that we're hearing one thing, I'm trying to connect with the community out here, and I recently realized that I just need to stop doing that. The legacy community here, they're very hateful on, well, not hateful. They're very anti-commercial and one of the big reasons why is because of all the mold that's in the product. It's full of mold, and they don't do enough testing, and the testing that they do is a lot of it's fabricated. I can't argue with any of those points. And then you smoke some cannabis and it makes you sick. You got to wonder what in the heck is going on. I don't really like to smoke cannabis from dispensaries anymore. I tend to try and find it from other sources.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so there's definitely way more testing in the legal market than there's no testing in the legacy market. So I think there's good actors in every segment, in the state legal markets, in the hemp market, THCA market, in the legacy market. There are good people creating good, clean product and putting it out there. There are also bad actors in every single one of those markets.
Oh, for sure.
And in probably roughly similar proportions, the ratio of good actors to bad actors to kind of in between, but you have all of them in all of this. So I think in the legal market, a lot of large facilities, very corporate, they brought in investors who put in millions of dollars. They want to show their numbers. They don't care. They're probably not there is going to be mold. There's fraudulent testing. There's probably actually less mold in the legal market than in the legacy market because they don't even know it's there in the legacy market.
Unless you see it. And you can't always see it.
You can see like certain things like powder mildew, you can see. Mm-hmm. You're not going to see most molds unless there's like a bad outbreak of it though. There's all of that, and it's given a lot of the legal market a bad name, but there are good people putting out good, fire that's clean in the legal market, and there's people in the legacy market that are putting out bad stuff. There's also, in all of these markets, people using dangerous pesticides. Now, in the legacy market, nobody's testing for that, and so I think about there's different levels to it. In the legacy market, you have lots of small batch cultivators, people who are caregivers in medical programs, people who have been doing it for years, and they're growing great product. But you also have in that, we'll call it the unregulated market, Chinese cartels using slave labor in huge facilities in Oklahoma, and they move out and people go in and there's banned poisons all over it. And then there's people doing these spray packs with all kinds of fake flavors and who knows what being sprayed on them. So you have to be leery and kind of use your discernment regardless of what market you're buying it in. It sucks that we can't all just have good trust in product anywhere. You just got to find out who you're shopping with, whether that's your, a contact in the legacy market who's, you've known maybe for years or just met, or going to a dispensary and shopping. Again, use your nose. That might not tell you about pesticides, but for the most part, facilities that are using heavy pesticides are not getting good quality cannabis. And part of it is because they're spraying pesticides in flower. So if the flower looks clean, if it smells rich and complex and amazing, it's not a guarantee, but in my mind, there's a much higher chance that that's going to be clean, quality product that is not moldy, that does not have poisons sprayed on it. Again, going back to trusting your nose.
I had a conversation on Facebook about all this stuff that we just talked about. I brought up the same points that you did, and I just got roasted by the legacy market talking about how much, how crappy the weed is that comes from dispensaries. And I made the same point you did, which is, okay, so how much testing are you doing? And their response was, an angry reply was, I don't need to test my stuff. I know what's in it.
Yeah.
Did you test the soil that you're growing that in? Nope. Have you tested the water that you're putting on that? Have you tested the fertilizers that you're putting on that? Because sometimes those get contaminated too. What about pesticide drift? Do you live next to a farm or somebody that gardens and they're outside spraying and your oxygen intake brings that in and disperses it in your grow without you knowing it? Just because you're growing with tender love and care doesn't mean that mold can't grow in your stuff or that pesticide drift can't happen or that your soil wasn't contaminated to begin with. So for you to tell me that your stuff is good because you know what's in it, if you haven't tested, you're guessing. You don't know.
Honestly, I would say the overwhelming majority of legacy market cannabis is would fail for aspergillus. Yeah, you can't see it unless there's a bad, like it's black mold when it's bad. But I've never seen black mold. I have actually, but I've rarely ever, and it was many years ago, seen black mold like ubiquitous on cannabis flower. So a lot of stuff you're not even going to see. They don't know. Most of it would fail. Now that does not mean at all that it's not safe. Like I said, we've had a couple of batches that failed for aspergillus. I couldn't send them to the store. I still smoked them. They're totally fine. Like it was not dangerous because one dead spore of aspergillus was in there. But the fact is, if you're growing in soil, in a tent especially, you would not pass testing in most states. But again, to clarify, that doesn't mean your cannabis is contaminated and dirty. In my mind, I would gladly smoke most of that cannabis. It's not necessarily dangerous, but we live in a world where there are microbials in the air everywhere. If you go outside, like I said, you're getting hit with particles.
Yeah.
Hundreds every hour. You're breathing in hundreds every hour. The average person breathes in 250 to 400 living aspergillus particles every single day. If you go outside, if you go over a walk in the woods, you are being bombarded. So, we haven't really decided what's exactly safe and what isn't, but a lot of this argument between the legacy market and the regulated market, there's people and they know they're taking business from each other and they hate each other and they hate that. And they're very cliquey and they're very gatekeepy.
Yeah.
And I've been in all of them. I started out in the complete, absolute, unregulated, illegal market where they would have thrown me in prison for growing a plant. That's what I started in. I continued through the medical caregiver, slightly regulated but mostly unregulated market for many, many years with no testing requirements. I entered the tribal regulated market that had the same testing requirements as the state, and now we're entering the Michigan State metric market that has all those testing requirements. And I have love for good people in all of those markets, and I have disdain for the bad actors in all of those markets. And it reminds me of people's like politics today. Everybody gets in their group and they get very cliquey and they paint everybody with a broad brush, and you're either good and on my team or you're evil and you're not on my team. And it's exhausting, and there's no room for nuance and seeing people as human beings. And I try to see the nuance in all of it. There's good people everywhere. There's bad people everywhere. It is what it is.
To keep things in perspective, have you ever smoked brickweed?
Oh yeah. That was
right.
That was 95% of what I smoked until I was in my late teens, and we started getting dank reliably. We got gross cartel, probably brickweed. It was
Who knows what was in that stuff?
And stems. Sometimes it would come up and it would smell like straight up mildew, mold. Other times it would come and it would smell like downy sheets because they wrapped the bricks in downy sheets to smuggle them across the border. It was so offensive that you could barely smoke it, but we still did because we were 13 and it was the only weed we could get or whatever. But I smoked lots of disgusting brickweed. Every now and again, you'd get some that was kind of green and had a little smell to it. And once in a while, you would see a trichome or two and be like, there's crystals on it. But it was gross. And then I would steal weed from my mom. She was a stoner. Rest in peace, Mama. I love you. And she would often have brickweed, but sometimes she would get skunk from like her biker friends, and it would be green, loud, offensive, great cannabis. And so I got to do that, and then sometimes friends' older brothers were in with the hippies that were growing, and we started getting some dank, and then it sort of gradually transitioned to now all we smoke is dank kind flowers.
The skunk weed that we get today is a pale comparison to the skunk weed from back in the day. I don't know where those genetics are or how they grew it or what happened, but we need to do whatever we can to bring back that skunk. That's stinky, nasty. I didn't smoke it for the longest time. I was like, oh my God, there's a dead skunk around here. They're smoking that good skunk bud, you know? And I was like, that smells gross. I'm not, it does. It smells just like there's a skunk.
Yeah, skunk spray.
And,
I miss it so much.
But then I smoked it one time, and then I was like, oh, now I get it. Yeah.
I love that skunky smell.
I do now too, right?
I look for it. That original skunk, and also it was a bunch, because not many people were growing and keeping clones and mothers back then.
Yeah.
They were growing seed crop to seed crop. There was very few growers, and, so the strain kind of got lost as they started breeding to control it, like out in Europe. They took it to Europe and tried to stabilize it in seed form, and it gradually, generation to generation, became the sweet skunks that are kind of generic. They're not very skunky. And that loud, offensive roadkill skunk was pretty much lost. The skunkiest weed I've found in the last 20 years have all either been like Chems or Kushes or like Death Star. My Chem 91 I had, 10, 15 years ago was extremely skunky. You could smell it skunk out the whole neighborhood. Same thing, my Death Star would skunk out the whole neighborhood. It actually, it had other smells in it too. It had some candy, it had diesel, it had rubber, but it also had that skunk spray bite to it that you just don't really see in hardly any strains anymore. I actually have the closest thing I've found to it in terms of aroma in recent years is I actually have, shockingly, it's a bubblegum marker phenotype that we hunted from a pack of Seed Junkies bubblegum marker. I was expecting bubblegum, candy, sherb, gas, and there are notes of that, but it actually smells like an old school Chem Kush from 20 years ago, but it's offensively skunky and gassy and garlicky, and it's just got a crazy bite, and people love it. I'm very excited about it. So we grow that as our skunkiest strain, but the flavor has actually a lot less of the skunk aspect. It's got much more of a piney Chem Kush, little bit of lemony, little bit of Z skittliness in there, just a pinch. It's delicious, and it's got great flavor.
It sounds
but it
amazing.
doesn't have the skunk translate as much to flavor as it does in the smell. But I've been searching for that old school raw roadkill skunk spray for years now. I've spent a lot of money on seeds and hunted through them that claim to be the skunk. We found the old school, and not a single one of them has come close to living up. So I've got a bunch more seeds still, but I kind of got discouraged taking up the time and money and space growing them, because not only were they not skunky, they weren't keepers in any fashion. They didn't have good terps at all. They were throwaway plants. So the hunt continues.
Let's switch gears. You touched on you've touched on so many things that I want to bring up.
Sorry to bounce all over.
No, that's okay. I want to kind of back it up just a little bit. We were talking about some shenanigans going on in the market, and I'm sure you and everybody else heard about the $1.5 billion worth of cannabis that was just closed down in Oklahoma from all these Chinese growers. Did you hear about that?
I actually didn't hear about that, surprisingly, because I've been following the kind of China cartel growers out there for a while. I know that they had tons of grows in Oklahoma.
$1.5 billion worth of cannabis. Apparently, they're supplying most of the United States.
Yeah, and that's your pesticide contaminated, probably contributing to the cannabis hyperemesis, people getting sick. I don't know. I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but I strongly suspect that is related to pesticides and toxins, and not just clean cannabis or just THC. Not that over THC consumption might not have possibly some issues, but so what happened with that? I didn't hear about that.
That's basically the blurb. They didn't release a lot of information. Most of the article was just fluff. You know what I mean? You know how it is when the government does a bust. It's just like, we did $1.5 billion worth of, and
cops posing with bags of weed.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Well, good. I don't. I'm not a prohibitionist, but I am not for violent criminals coming into the country and poisoning the American people with
Crap.
dangerous,
Yeah.
disgusting cannabis. I've been thinking this whole time, everybody hears about ice, and not to get political, but I'm like, a use for them is, we know for a fact Oklahoma has tens of thousands of Chinese illegal nationals using actual slave labor. They're holding people against their will.
Real slave labor.
Real slave labor, making them
Real.
sleep on the floor in the grows, and they're poisoning the American people. Why not use them for that? There's your target to go after somebody. And it's a human trafficking rescue operation. There's
Absolutely.
women in there who haven't
Absolutely.
seen sunlight in 6 months.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, they'll bring their own people over to the States. They'll take their passport, if they ever even had a passport, and they force them into labor. They're all watching their family back in China, and they're like, "We'll kill your family if you don't
Exactly.
if you don't do everything we tell you." And so it's horrible. It's horrible what's happening.
Legitimate slave labor held against their will, horrific treatment. I'm glad they got them, and I hope they get the rest of them too. If you want to use law enforcement in a cannabis capacity, there's where you do it. Leave the rest of us the hell alone.
I think most liberals, people that are screaming down about how ICE is so terrible, can even get on board with that.
Get on board with that. That's something everybody should agree with.
Right.
I say I don't get too political. I don't like to argue with people.
Right.
I see the nuance. I have views from all over the spectrum. But
me too.
There's something we can all agree with. Rescue those people being held there.
Yeah.
And let's get that poison from out of the systems of the American people.
We probably will never hear all of the horrors that actually happened. The stuff that they found during that bust, and all the stuff that's the negative stuff. We're just going to hear the 1.5 billion.
The
that's a
positive,
mind-boggling amount.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. So I just wanted to hit that for a minute. You talked about mentioned Oklahoma. Man, poor Oklahoma. They are having a tough time in the cannabis market. Those guys are really struggling there. I don't know if they're just doing it wrong, or I don't know what's going on, but they've had a lot of
too much. It's a tough market. I almost actually went down there and partnered. I talked to several facility owners down there. So the thing was, there was no regulation at all. They just let everybody throw up facilities without no inspections. If you had the medical license, you could just open a grow or a store. And so thousands of them popped up. And it was by far the most oversaturated state. And so pricing fell off a cliff. Yeah. And it's just medical, so they don't even have the whole adult use market to add all that extra demand. So it was a very big medical market, but oversaturated, lots of just disgusting, terrible, poorly grown product in, moldy, old, warehouses and pole buildings. But a lot of people also built, pretty decent facilities, and some people even built very nice, large commercial facilities. And a few years back, as my project here had stalled and there was no investment capital, I started saying, look, we've got a brand, we've got the product. Where can I get this and get going immediately? And I'll use funding from operating that to finish my facility here. And there was so many facilities for sale in Oklahoma, many of which were on rural property that came with a house to live in and a fully facility, and people opened them thinking they were going to make a bunch of money. Maybe they had a cousin that said he could grow weed, and now they're bleeding cash, and they have nothing to do with the facility. And there were some of them I talked with. They're like, we'll let you come down here and take it over. No money down. You could live on property. We've seen your product, on your Instagram and everything. We can talk with you. We know you know what you're doing. Come down here and run this facility, and let's get it making some money. And I almost did that because that sounded better than sitting here in limbo. But then we were able to get the tribal license and kind of get some traction. And I was like, it would be very easy to go do that in Oklahoma, but I would have to live down there in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma by myself on some random farm, possibly going to get robbed, who knows. And then try to come in not knowing anyone in that market, none of the retailers. And it's a tough market. There's very little cannabis. There's one or two brands that still get like top dollar connoisseur pricing, and they do have connoisseur product, but it's a small market for that. There's a couple people, I forget the one brand, I forget what they're called. I would have shouted them out, but I saw that they actually, they're wholesaling $3,000 pounds, and they're selling out rapidly, and people were prepaying for their next
Really?
harvest because
Wow.
they had actual great genetics that were grown to connoisseur quality. And that's rare in most markets. You can
It is.
find some in Michigan, you can find some in California. A lot of other states, it's like one or two brands that crank, and then there's a lot of mids.
Yeah.
So people will pay up for actual delicious, good smelling, tasting connoisseur flower. But it's a smaller end of the market. But those customers buy a lot more flower too. They're going to what you're trying to do with a micro and the small batch. It's a lot fewer of the total customers in a market, but they spend the most. They're the people
Right.
who love cannabis.
Yeah.
So there is a market that actually, it punches above its weight class, so to speak. But it's hard to sell that to investors.
For sure. I want to back up again a little bit, something you just kind of glossed over. If you're comfortable talking about when you got raided, I'd like to hear what
Oh,
that
yeah.
experience was like. Tell us about
Yeah,
that.
for sure. So twice. The first one I wasn't there, and I just lost my genetics. I had broken up with my ex-girlfriend who I was with for a number of years. But
Whoa, wait. Was this legacy market time or?
Yes, so I
Okay,
was a
all right.
caregiver in the medical
Okay, all right,
program.
okay.
But it was the unregulated free-for-all.
Okay.
You sent in your paperwork, you got your cards, you grew your plants. Nobody looked at what anything was happening.
Right.
So I had come back from Colorado a couple years earlier, and I had the original Chem 91. I had Death Star. I had this insane sour grapes. I had Golden Go. I had Tangerine Haze. I had the original Sensi Star. I had a lineup that if you gave me today, I could dominate the market. Every single one of them just banged on flavor. And so we had broken up, but we're on, fair terms. But it had been a volatile relationship at times. And so my grow was still out there on her property. I was renting her shop. And so I won't slander anybody or go into details because we actually have a great relationship now, not romantically, but friends. But
Good.
she had
Good.
called and was making sort of some demands and ultimatums and said, I'll call the cops if you don't do what I want, and I'll tell them your grow's here. I said, the cops, it's illegal registered grow. The state, I have my caregiver cards. The address is on there. They know that the grow is there.
Right.
And she threatened me, and I thought it was a bluff. And I said, do your worst. And I hung up the phone and put it on silent and went to bed. And she was not bluffing. She called the cops, and her boyfriend at the time, who was a really good guy, who's still kind of a buddy today, I kept seeing him calling. The phone was on silent, but it was vibrating. I answered his call. He's like, dude, she called the cops here. She's freaking out. I tried to stop her. I told the cops that this is legal. He's a caregiver. He's registered here. They could check. He's not breaking the law or hiding anything. And but basically, she told the cops, well, I didn't know it was here, which was a lie, but said, I didn't know it was here. I want it off my property. And so they took my whole gene pool. They took all of my plants. I lost a ton of amazing genetics. So that was raid number one. Not a kind of a no-knock raid. Someone called the cops. They took my genetics.
Right.
A big loss, but moved on. I was able to get a few of them back because I had some of them I had with other friends, other growers that I knew. I'd parked some of them with them and traded stuff. So I got some of them back, but I lost amazing legacy genetics, the original sour diesel, just tons of great stuff. A better gene pool than I even deserved to have. I wasn't a good enough grower to have that many good genetics, but Colorado, where I had started out, was like the mecca at the time. We came back with amazing stuff. Anyways, rest in peace to those genetics. So a few years later, I've got a caregiver grow in my home, and this is, the caregiver market's a bit more mature, but there's some dispensaries in Michigan, but they haven't been regulated yet. They didn't do the state licensing rollout, and we were not yet adult use. But basically, they passed a law that gave the cops access to the medical registry. And their reasoning was, well, hey, if we get a complaint that we think somebody's growing or it smells like weed, we can look at the registry and say, well, no, they're registered in the system. We don't need to go there. They're legal to be growing.
Which would have prevented the whole episode before, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was what they said to get that rule that gave them access.
On the first one, there were no charges related.
No charges were filed.
Okay, they just.
I called the cops and I asked for my plants back, and they're like, "No, you're not getting the plants." They're like, "We checked you out. You're on the registry. You weren't over on your plant count, so there's no legal charges coming, but your plants have been destroyed."
And a lot of times they'll do that too, and they'll cut the extension cord off your lights and your other stuff. So even if they do have to return it, it's still damaged.
They didn't take the equipment and they didn't trash it because they did see it was legal. But she said, "I want the plants off the property," and so they chopped them all and threw them all out. So anyway, so this next time now, this is years later. There's this new rule, so we shouldn't be raided. Because we're on the registry. So I found out, I'll give you the story, then I'll give you the backstory how I know what happened. So we're down, me, one of my patients, and a close friend of mine who was also a caregiver. We're down in the basement in my garden smoking a joint. We're standing there watching the grass grow, looking at new genetics, having a nice, it was a
bunch of weed nerds,
sunny afternoon. Exactly. Great day, not a care in the world.
Right.
And all of a sudden I hear, bap, 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 bap. It shook the house. I felt it in my bones. There was no doubt. I knew from the pit of my soul, this is the cops and the door is going to explode within seconds. This is the knock they do before they smash the door in.
Right.
This isn't the tap, tap, we want to talk to you. This isn't, I don't know, growing up, did you ever have friends who would show up, you guys be burning down or something, they pound on the door to scare you.
Like scare the shit out of
you. Like, I've had that happen. That's different. It's loud. It startles you. No friend would have hit my door that hard.
Sure,
I knew this is the cops, and they are coming in regardless of if I answer that door. Now, the rules at this time, they weren't the rules, but the courts had made a ruling that said, your room cannot be accessible to anyone. Even if they're legal caregivers or patients, you can't have them in your room. Your room should be separated, one room for each of your 5 patients, and only the patient who's in the room of their plants should even be allowed. So in certain counties, they were looking for any excuse to bust you. If your door wasn't locked, if your paperwork wasn't on the wall, if you had anyone else in the room, if you had one extra plant, they would bust you. And not only would they bust you, they would take you into court and they would say he was growing marijuana. Here's the marijuana we found. You were forbidden from telling the judge or the jury that you had a medical card and that it was a medical grow. If the cops arbitrarily decided that you were not in compliance, you were declared illegal, they charged you, and you were forbidden from making the medical defense or even letting them know that in court. It was such BS. It was completely corrupt. And they were, in certain parts of the states, they were busting people like crazy with this. People got busted by us, but the sheriff, he didn't like weed, but he wasn't gung-ho, kicking everybody's door. But they came to my house. Bap, 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 bap. So I usher them out of the room. Put down the joint. I usher them out of the room. I go, get upstairs, get in the other room. And as I go out and lock the door, I look back, there's my clone tray full of rooting clones. And I said, if all those clones are counted, I'm going to be 5 or 10 plants over or something, and I'm going to jail for sure. I thank God I did this. I turned back, opened up the clone dome, grabbed about half of them, and they were rooting. Because that's what, if it's got roots, it's a plant. Yep. I ripped the root balls off, tore them up, threw them in the trash, closed the lid, ran upstairs as fast as I could, got to the door. I'm freaking out because I had a big dog, an English Mastiff at the time. I'm like, dude, they're going to shoot my dog. My son was home. He's like 12 or 13 at the time.
Oh, no.
He's playing video games. I'm terrified they're going to come in guns blazing because, they do these. Wild, where you've heard the horror stories. The big dog, she's barking. So I'm like, I got to get to this door before they just smash in and the dog goes rushing. I got to the door as they were charging up with their little battering ram thing. I don't know if people have ever seen it. It's kind of this metal post thing with these handles. They are running at the door with it, and I open the door with my hands up. Stop! Hey, what's going on? Don't smash anything. We're not resisting. Yeah. What's going on? I had to it was emasculating. I had to kiss their ass so hard, but I knew what was going to happen if I didn't. If I would have resisted, they were going to beat my ass. They were going to destroy the house. They were going to take me to jail. They're going to shoot my dog. So I'm
take
just
your
trying
kid
to
away, probably.
Take my kid away. It would have been horrific on several fronts. So I say, hey, what's going on? They say, I go, do you have a warrant? They say, yes. I go, give me the warrant. You guys can come in. I'm not resisting if you want to search, but listen. You see, I have this dog. She's barking. You can watch me. Let me put her in the bathroom or something. She's not super aggressive, but she's scared right now, okay?
Yeah.
And they did.
Poor
They're
dog.
okay, so they're watching me. They've all got their faces covered with masks. They've got assault rifles pointed at me. It was like a 6-person SWAT team that came for it. Full body armor, assault rifles, faces covered. We're about to smash the door, and so they're watching me. I grab the dog by the collar, and I bring her in the bathroom, and they're, on me. I put the dog up, and I'm like, okay, give me the warrant. Come in. They tell me, yep, we have a warrant to search the house, and they knew right what they were doing. They went straight to the basement. And my thought at the time was, somebody told on me. I sold somebody a bag, and they fucking snitched on me. That was not accurate. I found out what happened after the fact. So the lead sheriff comes in, the guy leading the raid. He's this short, jack dude, no neck. He looks like a bulldog. He wanted violence. He came to smash shit and take people to jail. You could tell how annoyed he was that I was being compliant. He wanted an aggressive. He's probably roided out. He wanted trouble. And so he led the raid, and he comes in. So he was super aggressive. One or two of them were pretty on alert, but not crazy, 2 or 3 of them looked bored. They looked like, can you believe they've got us dressed up for fucking weed? They seemed like they didn't really agree with it, but they're doing their job, whatever. One of them, thank God for her, because I think it could have turned out way different if she wasn't there. There was one young female cop on the raid who did not have her face covered, who was not aggressive, who was not holding a gun. I don't know if it was she was in training or whatever. She was very nice and sort of calming. Well, it's good you're quiet. I'm in the medical program. You guys, it's great. You're complying. We're going to check you out. She was trying to reassure me. She saw that there was a cat down in the basement where I had my grow rooms, built off, that had broken in through the ventilation a couple weeks earlier. A stray cat that was on death's door, and I nursed it back to health. She saw that, and I told her, he broke in the window, and she was like, "Aw," so she's being super sweet. Her calming feminine energy and the fact that she was there, I believe, prevented them from being animals. I believe they were worried about looking too aggressive in front of her because she's new and she's young and she's a woman, and she probably doesn't think it's okay to shoot dogs and smash people's heads open and to be awful. So thank God her and the bulldog led the raid downstairs through the rooms. He came, he counted every plant 10 times. He was going to weigh product. Thank God I was nowhere near over. I only had I was sold out. I had an ounce of flour left, maybe. I'm you can weigh it if you want, but it's clearly not as much as I'm allowed to have. And so he counted all the plants, and then he goes in the trash and he sees the ripped up clones, and I'm here's the moment that's going to decide everything. And I also had weed. I was pointing out the law to him the whole time too, to make sure he knew that I was aware. And because I had a bunch of weed that was hanging, and I've heard of them weighing the hanging wet weed and being you're over on weight. But there was a court ruling that said it is not considered weighable, usable flower until it has been dried and trimmed and separated from the stems.
Okay.
But I had a bunch hanging, and I'm if he weighs that, I'm done. So I'm this is hanging, but this is not usable product under the law. It's still wet, da-da-da-da. he finds the clones. He's like, what's going on here? I'm like, well, you know, not every clone's going to root. So I want to keep the genetics alive so my patients have the medicine that they prefer. And, you know, so I put a bunch of clones to have them root for my plants, but I'm never going to grow more than I'm allowed to. So as they start to root, if it looks like there's going to be extras, I just throw them out right away. And he was like, okay. And they went up, and much to their disappointment, they left empty-handed. I didn't have too many plants. I didn't have too much product. And it's funny because if they'd have came a few days earlier and weighed all the product, wouldn't have been great. Wouldn't have been great for me. So they leave. It was traumatizing. It was emasculating to have to.
Did your friend shit their pants?
Here, this is funny too. So my one buddy is terrified. My good friend. They're just sitting on the couch the whole time while the other 2 or 3 cops are upstairs just watching over them, right? Yeah. The other buddy, he was a patient of mine. He's a little older than us. You know, I was probably 30 then. He was probably going on 50. He'd been to prison before for fighting with the cops.
Oh, no.
He is kind of this, country, little skinny, wiry, but like, those strong, wiry, skinny, scrappy dudes.
He's wiry. Yeah.
He is. Dude, he's a fighter. He's a scrapper. He's been to prison. He hates the cops. He says, and I hear him say this, and I was terrified. I was like, I wanted to be like, don't fucking say that. We're almost out of this. Don't say anything now. He couldn't help himself, but nothing happened, so it was hilarious, and it's the best part of the whole raid. He looks up at them, and in his raspy voice, he says, don't you motherfuckers have anything better to do? Have you solved all the murders? Have you got all the heroin and all the methamphetamine off of our streets? You're here crashing in doors over a plant? You feel good about yourself? And I'm like, oh God, they're going to bust our heads and take us to jail for sure. They didn't. They were just like, we're doing our job, man. And then he shut up. And I'm happy he said it now because it was hilarious.
Yeah.
But it was terrifying.
Right, yeah.
So they left empty-handed, and that was the raid. It was terrifying, but I'm not eager to ever have to go through it again.
I'm always shocked by people who are unruly with police. I don't feel like anything good is ever going to come from being aggressive to, or being insulting, or using profanity, or any throwing stuff.
I get the instinct, if you think it's an injustice, or you just don't like the cops. Like, I have no particular love. I see things a little more nuanced as I'm older. Like, the world is what it is. But there's nothing good is going to happen from you're going to lose that fight.
Yeah,
for sure. If you think you're in the right, comply and sue the hell out of them. Take it to court.
That's where you fight.
Nothing good is going to happen from fighting with them, and you might fucking lose your life. Like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah,
so, I hate to be like, yes, sir, blah, 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 whatever, but I'd rather not get shot. I don't want to be a national news story. I don't want to go through a big court case. Like, you know, pick your battles.
So how did you find out that this was happening?
What actually happened.
Yeah.
So this is funny. So my next door neighbor behind us is nice older woman. She is the mother of a friend of mine that I went to school with, her daughter Corenda. And I went to school together. She's actually gotten weed from me before. Super cool. So I get a call the next day. Oh my God, my mom said the cops were all over there. What happened? I'm like, we got raided. It was crazy. Like, I don't know if somebody snitched or got caught with a bag, or somebody didn't like me, or what happened. She says, well, my mom saw this cop or this guy creeping around by your basement window in the middle of the night. So here's what had happened. The day before the raid, I was the corner house, and kitty corner from us across the street, there was an older woman who had some kind of a medical episode, or maybe, I don't know what happened, because there was cops there too. It wasn't just ambulances, but for whatever reason, she needed to go to the hospital, and there was 1 or 2 ambulances and 2 or 3 cop cars, and they needed somewhere to park, and they parked in my front yard. And I had, forget what was it, Death Star growing? I don't know what was growing, but it was the carbon
skunky?
filter could not contain it. It was skunky. You were gonna smell it if you were in our driveway or in our yard.
Oh, shit.
So they must have smelled it when they parked
Gotcha.
in the yard. That makes sense. So then that night at 2:00, so the cop probably smelled it, went back to the station, told the narcotics detective, "Hey, this house is definitely growing weed. It stinks there." Whether they ever checked the registry or not, I don't even know. They were supposed to, and if they did, they didn't care. It didn't stop them. They
Right,
came anyways,
yeah.
despite the fact that we were legally registered. And so the next night at like 2:00 in the morning, my neighbor and her boyfriend were sitting on their front porch, like having a cigarette. And like the guy didn't see them because they were like kind of from like the side view. They see this like little Camaro pull up in our yard, and this guy, sort of suspicious looking dude, get out and creep up over to the house sniffing around and go up to the very window where my exhaust from the carbon filter was. And he snooped around by there and looked and sniffed, got back in his car and left. And so they came, they checked it out, they came back and raided us. I'm like, why didn't she call me that night or the next morning and be like, hey, there's a guy sniffing around by the window?
That's pretty stupid. That's a good way to get
heads up
shot.
Would have been nice. Yeah, no, I know, because he's not even dressed like a cop.
Right,
like,
yeah.
You know, a lot of people, if they would have seen him, they would have had a gun to the back of his head. Like,
Right,
"Don't
yeah.
fucking move."
Yeah.
So, yeah, so they must have smelled weed when the neighbor had, you know, her medical episode, and they came back, and no, they didn't knock on the door and say, hey, we smell weed, we see you're on the route, nothing. They didn't say, hey, can we talk to you? They sent the narcotics task force SWAT team in full body armor, face masks, and assault rifles.
And a battering
to come
ram.
Crash, and a
Getting ready
battering
to
ram. They
smash
were gonna
your
crash
house
in
open.
the door because it smelled like
shit.
weed. So that was kind of literally like the last year or two of those days. It's a different world now. They're not
Yeah.
crashing indoors if they smell weed, thankfully. But, you know, that was sort of the last legs of the drug war on weed. Not necessarily. It looks like it might be coming back now, but that was the we're kicking anybody's door for anybody reason day.
Well, you don't if you're growing weed, you don't only have to watch out for the cops coming into your house busting your shit. It could be some other criminals that come in that
Yes.
want to. I have a friend that got shot in the face over
wow.
a drug deal and left him for dead, and his girlfriend was there. Thank God she was able to convince the guys, gave them some money and convinced them to leave, and was able to get him to the ambulance or to the hospital, and he almost died. There's a great story
Wow.
on my YouTube about it. He's
I'll have to check that out. Damn.
yeah, I'll send you a link. It's a freaking amazing story about how he survived that and all the stuff he went through. His name is JC Cerise. He's Dr. Smoke in Kansas City. He owns a couple. I think he owns more than just one, but smoke shop.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah,
I'm glad
so-
he made it. And-
Yeah, he's a
that's
legacy
crazy.
guy from back in the day. But yeah, sometimes the cops are not your biggest worry. Sometimes it's your friends, you know, sometimes it's your friends, or you know, they'll tell somebody that, hey, break in here and steal his shit. Give me some whatever.
Especially back then, you know, now the weed's everywhere. If they're trying to rob like huge grows and stuff like that. I mean, if people knew you were growing back in the day,
Yeah.
you were a target.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Wow, that was a crazy story. I'm glad you shared that with us. One thing that you didn't say earlier, I don't think, is you didn't tell people how to find your website.
Oh, so the website is under construction, but you can
Oh,
find
is
me.
it? Okay.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Jeff Khoshaba, JeffKhoshaba. You can also find me. We have our Instagram pages, so it's at J Kashava. That's at J_KUSHAVA, and at Kashaba Craft, KUSHAVACRAFT. Those are the Instagram pages. You can also find at Kashaba Craft on X as well. And then the website is www.kashabacraft.com, but it is not up and running yet. Hopefully in the next probably couple of months, that'll come online.
Man, when I got my, I avoid social media like the plague. until I got my micro business license. And then I was like, man, I need to, put myself out there so people know who I am and can find me. And I went to go get on X. I created an account. Like 3 days later, I deleted it because every time I logged in, I was bombarded with conservative this and that, or like ads and so much. And I'm not a liberal. I'm an independent voter, but I don't want to feel like I'm getting propaganda forced down my throat. And I was like, man, this X is too much. I had to get off of it.
You have to switch and make sure you're on following versus for you. You really have to build your feed there. So there's two settings, and if you have it on for you, it's all political stuff. There's a lot more. So it used to be, before Musk bought it, it was a non-stop sort of like a lot of left-wing and a lot of establishment media constantly. He bought it. It became tons of right-wing stuff being forced on your throat constantly. And then now there's still a lot of that, but there's also a lot of left-wing stuff. A lot of it is they push like the most emotionally charged and divisive people from both sides because it creates engagement. They get you commenting and arguing. So on the one side, you'll see a lot of free speech and political stuff that's not on any other platform there. So you can find out, because all the independent people are on there too. So it's the place where you have the greatest possibility of sort of seeing the things that aren't being reported and what's going on.
Really?
It also has kind of the most highly charged political bullshit and propaganda thrown at you as well. But if you do following, you got to go make sure you follow all the people you want to follow and kind of tailor it. And so I try to make sure, especially the Kashaba Craft account is just cannabis related and cannabis business related stuff. So its feed isn't a bunch of political shit that I do not want to intellectually or emotionally engage with.
For sure.
But we have one on there. I don't really use it very much. I haven't posted in months on there. Much more active on Instagram and LinkedIn are sort of the two big ones I use, and I'm trying to use more, especially as we're going to come to mass market now and really promote the brand a bit more.
I recently deleted my Instagram account because I'm also on Facebook. And they kind of link the two together, and it was getting confusing. Where am I posting? Or I posted this, it's not where I expected. It was just like going back and forth between the two became cumbersome. So just to simplify things for my old school brain, that's not really, I had to delete the Instagram account. So I'm mostly on Facebook. They try to get you to share
to both. They try to get so whatever you're using on one, you're also doing on the other, and then you start getting stuff from the other side in your feeds too, and it's a mess. They just want to drive as much engagement because Zuckerberg owns both of them.
Right. Well, we've gone about an hour and 20 minutes. That's a good amount of time, but I did want to touch on one more thing that you mentioned earlier, and that was genetics. Here's my thoughts. I think there's a lot of crap out there right now. Everybody that's just throwing some pollen at a plant and then selling. And you touched on this earlier too. You're like, I'm hunting down that gas, that skunk. But a lot of those I grew out. They weren't even worth keeping. Man, that's so disappointing when you spend some money for beans, even if you get the beans for free. And then you grow it out and you find out, well, this is crap.
Resources.
There's a lot of good places out there, but I think there's so many more that are just absolute crap that are watering down the market with just crappy genetics. And that's my thoughts on genetics. What did you want to bring to the conversation?
So I take a bit of a nuanced view. So on one hand, there's never been so many genetics available. And there is a lot of truly exotic and rare and old school stuff out there. I have not found a reliable place to source true skunk seeds, even though some people have those skunk #1 genetics. But once skunk went from just being the skunk bud that the bikers were selling to the skunk #1, #2, #5 being bred then in Amsterdam when they worked those lines, they became sweet. It became something different. It's just not true skunk anymore.
Right, yeah.
So, so there's too much of the same stuff. You get these hype waves where whatever's popular, it's been runts and then the runts and candy hybrids. So candy is all the rage. Candy gas too. Now I like some candy strains, and I really like some good candy gas strains. Like I think Runts is a great strain, but I like variety. I like to have a wide variety of flavors, for the palate.
For
Various
sure, yeah.
lemons, citruses, candies, funks, gas, skunks, various variations and subtleties on those, exotics, chemicals, old school like haze flavors. So there's a lot out there, but if you want to find a lot of that stuff, you got to source the right breeders and you got to hunt it yourself. If you just want to get high quality clones, you can find a lot of them. You can also find a lot of complete crap. But what you're going to find is mostly all the hype stuff that is whatever is popular right now. That's what the clone banks are mostly selling. So it's hard to find some of the old school stuff. But there is a lot of good stuff out there. But like I said, you mostly have to hunt. Or for that best stuff, you're going to have to really find someone reputable and probably pay up for it. In many cases, but I've got, it's just so time consuming to hunt, the space and resources and times, I've got, and my collection is small compared to a ton of growers and especially breeders, but, I probably got $10,000 worth of seeds that, it just keeps growing and growing. I, was buying them so much quicker than I could hunt through them. And now I really haven't bought a lot of seeds for the last couple of years just because I don't have the time and space to hunt through all of them. But I've got a ton of good stuff in there. So
I got to admit that when they did when they passed the legislation that closed the hemp loophole, I went out and panic bought a bunch of seeds, worrying that the price is, the closer we get to that 1 year deadline, that seeds are not going to be available anymore, or that the price is going to really go up. So I went out and panic bought some seeds, even though I can't grow. I got the seeds so that when I do move to a state where it's legal, I'll have some genetics to get going. I bought my stuff from Cincy Seed. They're reputable. They've been around for a long time. I don't think you can go wrong buying from them. They'll back up their product. Like if you get a pack of 5 seeds and some of them don't germinate, you just call them. And I've heard people, they'll send you some replacements out. So I'm pretty happy with that. Thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I mean Sensi Seeds, they're legends. I don't actually have any gear from Sensi, but they're one of the ones that I think started in Amsterdam and been doing it for decades and decades since those early skunk days of the first cannabis cups and the first breeders kind of getting commercial. So there's them and Paradise and a ton of those good legacy old school ones who have a lot of those older genetics that you can find. Greenhouse has a ton of good old and modern stuff. In the modern world, there's a lot of candies, but there's also a lot of cushions and gas from like Seed Junkie. And the Cakes has a lot of good stuff. I've got several good things from him that we grow right now. The permanent push pop, that bubblegum marker, that's the skunkiest plant I've found in years, is actually a new school genetic from Seed Junkie. I didn't expect that profile, but we found it in there. So they do great stuff. Sourcing clones is always iffy because I've ordered so many clones and it's not actually the strain that they say it is. But, if you look around, you can find a lot of good stuff, a lot of variety. Like I said, it's been concentrated and kind of bottlenecked in some areas with a lot of the same sort of, they started as chem and kush lines, but eventually became cookie lines, became cake lines, became gelato lines, became dessert lines, became runt lines. Then the Z line came into that, and there's so many that are just being inbred, backed into each other over and over and over. So there's a lot of similar profiles. The plants are a lot of kind of the same. And yet, that said, I'm seeing people pulling unique flavors out of those packs that are not just like the parents. So you kind of never know what you might get out of any pack of seeds. We want to find and bring to market a variety of a ton of different flavors. We want to have some of the Z's and the candies and gases that are popular, but we want to have some good lemons and some good uplifting sativa strains. Eventually, like I said, we want to have some old school stuff. We want to have like some exotic sativas, hazes, even some land races that are hard to grow and they might not be as economical, but are very special and unique and different. And I've heard about some people starting to do that now with their brands. It's very, very limited, but I think we will see the genes pool start to expand over the coming years because there are enough breeders and growers now saying, you know, what the hell, we're not doing a service to the species by being so limited in these varieties. So we're seeing there's people, there's like the Landrace Seed Bank, there's gosh, I wish I could think of more of them off the top of my head. There's breeders like Bodie who do lots of old Kush, hash plant, chem varieties that, you know, people love and are very, you know, great. And like I said, you can always find lots of cookies and runts and inbreds and pollen chucked stuff all over. And some of that stuff we've found some great keepers out of that have amazing flavor and smell and look and, you know, smoke great. So, hopefully we'll see the variety continue to expand and not just be another iteration of Runts Lemon Cherry Gelato, because, you know, those are good strains, but that's not all anybody wants to smoke. They sell, but find anything, my opinion is anything that has amazing flavor and a good effect, there's a market for. You're going to have to get people's nose on it maybe, but once they smell it, they're going to want to smoke it. Once they smoke it, they're going to want to come back and buy it again. It's our job to make sure people are aware that there is amazing cannabis that's not just the same thing that everybody's growing. And I think that's the niche for small batch, for micros, for social equity applicants. Have your niche, stand out, have unique genetics, make sure you have flavors, make sure you're not copying what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
There is a market out there. It's a smaller market, but it's way better to connect with a loyal, smaller market than to try to do the same thing everybody else is doing. If you copy everybody else, you're going to get the results they are, and they're failing. The small people trying to copy the big guys are failing. The big guys are failing because nobody wants to buy their crap product. They can only sell pounds for $600 now because it's bland, flavorless crap. You know, whatever it is, if it's edibles or concentrates or especially flower, find your lane, find your consumer, find that niche that's underserved, and pour yourself into a quality, consistent experience and get it in people's hands. And there's the opportunities out there.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about before we call it?
You know, I guess just to kind of even further on that is to tell people to get their head up. It took us, you know, almost 4 years to get this facility done and financed and designed and built, and it was a nightmare. And in hindsight, if I knew we weren't going to be able to get the funding, if I knew it was going to take this long, I would have kept my day job, blew up my caregiver garden bigger, and been hunting and cranking fire flower and done the tribal thing and just saved money and taken over a failing facility. If you're looking to come to market now, a lot of times your best, in mature states particularly, your best bet is focus relentlessly on developing your product and your brand and making sure you have something special that resonates with people. And then don't think you're going to be able to go out and raise a bunch of money. You're not. Don't try to build some big, brand new, beautiful thing from scratch. There is infrastructure. They have overbuilt infrastructure, both in retail and cultivation and processing, in almost all the mature states, because as everybody rushed in, and they are now failing, and you can take them over with a lot less money. In some cases, like if you're a cultivator, they're very, very tough markets. You better be good. But you can just, like in Michigan, in Colorado, in Washington, in California, you can just walk in and lease a ready-built, licensed facility with little to no money down. You're going to have the money to operate it. You're going to have to be able to do it. But the barriers to entry are now lower than they have ever been in hindsight, I would have just focused on my brand, dialing in the craft, hunting genetics, and stacking up as much money as possible and keeping my finance day job that I was able to do caregiving and still have. And then I would have just picked any facility in any state I wanted and gone in with a brand people are aware of and just taken over. So look for the path of least resistance. You're not going to be able to raise tons of money. You're lucky if you can raise a little bit. Focus on your brand, focus on your product, build a following for it, and find the path of least resistance. Find the way to get to market. That could be taking over something. It could be partnering with an existing operator. For some people, it might be licensing agreements. It wasn't that for us. I don't want to just give out SOPs and give the brand to somebody and hope they do a good job with it. I want direct control over that. But there are ways to get into the regulated cannabis market. There is also the entire hemp market, where until the end of the year, you can kind of do whatever you want, but brand, product, customer, cash flow. Don't worry about infrastructure, and just go in. And if you can do that, it's difficult, but there are tons of opportunities. The industry is wide open. 5 years from now, who the players are is going to look very, very different than who the players are today. There will be very successful companies that nobody's yet heard of today, and there are big brands that will not exist in 5 years. So if you truly love it, if you're truly passionate about it, go all in, do the things that I just touched on, and the opportunity is there for you. If you do not love the plant and you don't want to do it and you think it's going to be easy and that you're just going to make a lot of money, start a different business. Start some sort of e-business. Sure. Do anything else. There are much easier paths of entrepreneurship if you just want to start a business and make money. So that would be my sort of advice to the social equity applicants, to the micro businesses, to the small batch cultivators, to the legacy people who want to come into the market. That would be the better way to do it.
I think also, you're going to piss a lot of people off, no matter what you do. You're going to make a lot of enemies. Don't let that stop you. There's just more people that are going to enjoy what is, as long as you're doing something with a little bit of quality. There's going to be more people that support you than don't. Don't let the haters keep you down.
For sure.
They're
going to be there.
I love my haters, actually. They make more noise than anybody else. They promote me more than anybody else. And it's fun for me when they get all spun up.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's publicity, especially like, I don't know what the right level is of like just letting them hate and not engaging. And, there's some value, especially for some people, to kind of poke them a little bit. If it gets the promotion. I try to avoid the confrontations, but I'm ready to, if anybody messes with us, to tell them to go fuck themselves. Don't worry about making enemies and haters.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
I try to, I have no beef with any segment of the market, whoever you are. I don't care if you're in a regulated market or taxed, or if you're legacy, or you're a caregiver, or you're social equity, or you're building a big business. If you're a good person, I wish you the best. If you love the plant and want to do well and bring something great to the people, then I will connect with you. But we're here for who resonates with us. Not everybody's going to like us. And, quite frankly, they can go fuck themselves then. We're not for everybody. And that's another big thing. Don't try to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
You can't make every product great. You can't serve every niche of the market great. You will never make everyone happy. Find what you are best at, what you really love, and what other people then validate and also love, and double down like hell on that. It's better to be amazing at one thing than to try to have your hands in a bunch of stuff. You're not going to do anything well. You're going to piss a bunch of people off, and you're going to be overwhelmed, and you're going to fail. Find your people, find your tribe, find what resonates, find your customer, and go heads down, all in on connecting with and building with who you're supposed to build with, whether that's from partners or from your customers, your fan base, your brand base, and don't worry about the rest. It's not for everybody. Don't try to be some giant overnight. Just, keep doing the right things with the right people, one step at a time, and be patient. Good things take time, and it's hard, though. It's there's a lot easier lives out there. So I warn, if you're not genuinely passionate about it, if you're not built for, maybe being broke as hell for a long time and fighting an extremely tough uphill battle, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you love it and it's what you're called to do, go all in and do it. The opportunity's there. A lot of these big operators are way weaker than they let on. Capital is not the advantage that they all said it was. They thought they were automatically going to win because they had capital, and what you've seen is the well-capitalized companies, many of them have failed. The people who got big quickly have failed. There's a few large MSOs that are doing okay, but they're not doing as great as they were. And what have they done? They've shut down operations in Michigan, in California, in Oklahoma. They can't compete in competitive markets. In the competitive markets, the people winning it are the people who come from legacy cannabis, the people who love it, the people who have focused on building great brands that are actually representative of who they are and what they love. And I've saw small businesses with a dream come in and start with one room, and now they have multiple grows, they're expanding, they've got stores they're having because they started doing what they love and they connected with their customers, the real customers, connoisseurs, whatever their niche was, they connected with them, and they're getting bigger while the big guys are putting their facilities up for sale, while they're shutting down half their rooms, while they're laying off employees. If you can do that and treat your employees good, build a team that people love, take care of your people, pay them well, give them opportunity to grow, and then you're going to be able to grow together and you can do amazing things in this industry. Don't be discouraged by how hard it is. It is wide open. No one has locked down anything yet.
Before we go, please tell people where they might be able to find some of that gas that you have.
Yes, so currently the only spot you can find us is in the tribal retailer Rolling Embers. What they have is whatever they have left of our last couple of drops. I think there's still some permanent push pops, some bubblegum marker, and some sunset runs. And that's what it was. Angie Roulier, who you had on your podcast, who actually got some and tried it. She got some sunset runs.
That's who it was.
She loved it. She said it's fire. I appreciate that. Those were great flower drops. Now, I will say, and I don't want to cast any shade at Rolling Embers, we're totally grateful for the opportunity they gave us to get to market, to prove our concept. But without our input or permission, they raised the prices, and they're charging a lot of money for our flower. I do not agree with the price point that is on the flower right now. It's great flower, but it's not moving as quickly because it is, in my opinion, too expensive. That I didn't put that price on there. They did. They saw it was great flower, and they said, well, it can command top dollar. And it is, but it's moving slower. So I worry about flower potentially getting stale and somebody paying the exorbitant price that they're charging for, and then being like, oh, this is like getting a few months old now. It's not as good as it was maybe. And I hate for that to reflect poorly on them. I'm actually going to call them and ask if they will bring that price point down. But so that's the only place you can find us right now, unless you catch me personally at an event, or if I give people samples in Michigan, other operators, consumers all the time around here. But now that we got our certificate of occupancy, we're a few weeks away from our state inspection, and then it's going to be again, 4 or 5 months till we have a crop come down in the new facility. But then we're going to be statewide in Michigan. You will definitely be able to find us at some New Buffalo dispensaries right on the border there. So we'll kind of be serving the tri-state area there, and we'll be throughout Michigan. We'll be in Detroit. We'll be, on the western side of the state. We'll be kind of spread out all over, and you'll be able to get a much wider variety of Kashaba Craft products sort of all over the place. But for right now, it's just there at Rolling Embers, or unless, you link with me directly.
I just interviewed Angie yesterday for the podcast. So I'm in the editing booth all day today and probably all day tomorrow to try and get these episodes out. So look forward to that. That's going to be an interesting episode. We talked a lot about the medical side of cannabis and scrometing and all those fun things that you're hearing about.
She is a wealth of knowledge. Angie's great.
Yeah, she was. We had a great conversation. She was really, and in fact, I was so impressed with her knowledge that when she said that you had the fire craft, I was like, oh, I got to talk to this guy. So then I got you on here.
I told her too that if she liked that sunset run, she'd love the stuff we're taking down now. Some of the new stuff we're growing and taking down, especially now fresh batches of, are incredible. I think people are gonna lose their mind for some of this stuff when it hits the market.
Would it be fair to say that being on the Social Equity in Missouri podcast has been one of the highlights of your entire life?
It would. This is a lifetime highlight. Yeah. I appreciate you having me on. No, genuinely, though, I appreciate you having me. I love that you're shining a spotlight on that. Because if you just want to take a second to touch on social equity, just for a second,
sure,
because
you
didn't so much. Yeah. It's tough. The programs might be well-intentioned, but there's not a lot of help. And it almost, in some cases, seems the more they tried to help, the worse and harder they made it for people. Yeah. In Michigan, we get a nice discount on our state fees, so that's been great. Mm-hmm. And they have some directories where you can potentially try to, link with people, but there's not really a lot. You can get some guidance. You can call, the regulators and pick their brains or get meetings with them. So there's some help there, but there's no financing for social equity businesses. Everybody hears that and they go, oh, well, you just got the license because you've been arrested or maybe you're a minority or whatever. They don't think you maybe have the business acumen to run a business, or they think it's too small. So there's no capital. In New York, they tried to allocate capital, and they went out and they're like, we're going to go ahead and build you dispensaries and give them to you, and you can pay back the loan on them. So you don't have to have a bunch of money. And so, well, that sounds good. What happened is a lot of these social equity people who got those licenses were actually millionaires. And then, to say, should they be given a social equity license, when there were maybe more deserving people who needed to hand up more.
Right.
The other thing is some people weren't, but they went into it and they put their life savings into it. And the state said, okay, here's your store. We had it built. So they went out and they they leased real estate, super expensive real estate. It's New York. It's crazy.
Oh,
then they gave one contractor who was connected to the regulators the contract to build all these stores. And the state then funded them. He then went out, never set foot in the stores, but didn't actually oversee the build out. He's just subcontracted it out to a bunch of other contractors in New York who then go out and sub it out to a bunch of tradesmen. So people were being given this store that should have cost, $250,000 to $250,000 to like $400,000 to actually build out. Well, because so many people have had their hands in it now, you've got this out-of-state contractor who made hundreds of thousands on every single build-out without ever even being in there. So they say, okay, here, you owe $1.3 million, back to us because that's what it costs to build. And then the market's all messed up, and there wasn't enough product, and there wasn't enough consumers because there was so many illicit stores. So people, social equity applicants, step into these stores. They're like, well, you've got huge debt at huge interest rates that you can't pay back now because this business isn't going to make enough money to do that. And you have $1.2 million in debt instead of, $350,000 in debt because the state gave the contract to their cronies to do the work for you. How nice of them.
Right.
And so, same thing, California, very corrupt processes. It's very difficult for social equity. The programs have not worked very well. There was a bunch of funds who talked about we're going to fund social equity entrepreneurs. I sent decks and LinkedIn messages and phone calls to multiple of them, and I never got a single response back from any of them. So social equity has been a bit of a farce compared at least to what was promised and the help and resources that were going to come. They're not really out there very much. You'd be better off just linking with like individual other entrepreneurs who have a soft spot for helping people come up than a lot of these official programs. It's tough.
I'm running out of time to get my social
I gotta go
equity.
Too.
To get my social equity license going. Yeah, we'll let you go, but I was just going to say, in Missouri, they give you 2 years from the time they issue your license for you to get your facility commenced. I'm coming up on like 4 or 5 months left, and I have made zero progress. Doesn't look like I'm going to find any success doing this. I'm not giving up, but based on my progress so far, it doesn't look promising. Yeah. But I'm still, hopefully, I'll be able to figure something out and get something going.
Yeah, I don't know if you can find, an existing. You don't need to own the property, do you? Can you lease like a
Yeah, we can
storefront?
lease. Yeah.
Say if you could just find a good spot to lease and kind of bare bones minimum, and I don't know how expensive the regulations are to require, to comply with there in Missouri. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, 2 years is difficult. If you if you have $1 million and your eye on a property already when you start the process, between all the regulatory hurdles and approvals and building design approvals and then trades and inspections and delays and materials, like it could take 2 hours if you were completely ready to go from the jump, let alone if you're trying to get funding in.
Yeah.
So those deadlines are stupid. I get they don't want people to like sit on licenses, but they should be renewing them for people and giving them some more time to comply, because they've got to see that so few people are actually getting open, because it's very difficult.
The other side of that is that when we first started this social equity thing, I dumped I had a nest egg before we got into this. I spent all that. It's all gone now. So I don't have any money left to invest in this. And I really hesitant to throw good money after bad, so.
I feel you.
If I'm a kind of an old guy, I know I look like I have a youthful appearance, but I'm nearly 60 years old. And so I don't have an opportunity to, if I screw this up, I probably can't start over again.
Yeah.
If I screw this up, it means, my wife and I are going to be homeless and I'll be eating cat food when I retire.
Yeah.
So I got to be really careful about how I proceed. So there's real challenges and there's real consequences. If you do it right, it's, hey, you finally made it after all the struggle. But like you said, there's a lot of people that had a lot of resources and business acumen that finding failure in this. So
yeah, no, for sure. It's tough. It's tough the way they set some of these micro things up. They make it very difficult to actually be successful in the market. If you can only source from this small handful of people who only have this little bit of product,
right,
you're going to have this very limited variety of product. I don't know how they expect you to be able to easily compete with, the store who can buy anything from any of the big producers.
Right, at a fraction of the price, too.
Yeah, and they can buy at scale, and they have a chain of stores, and they have purchasing power, and they're vertically integrated, many of them, so they make them themselves, and they can sell it for cheaper. So, I mean, they really need to start, kind of rewriting some of these rules to make it feasible for people to be able to find success.
Jeff, this is where we need to stop talking. I feel like we could just go on and on, So definitely we need to probably come back and do well, let's get you back on the show again when after you've got your facility open and you have some product for sale around the state.
Perfect. I would love that.
Yeah, let's do that.
This has been great. I've enjoyed talking with you.
Oh, yeah, me too. And in the meantime, if I find a good fit for you, a lot of times I'll have a former guest on as a co-host on a future episode. So if you're interested in being a co-host on another cannabis-related podcast, I'll ring you up and we'll talk about it.
I'd love to. Thanks. Yeah, let me know if something you think's a right fit comes along.
Will do. It's been great talking to you, man. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you. And if you want to find that fire where Jeff is from, you got to go out to the Indian Res right now and find it. In a few months, it'll be all over.
Yes, sir. Yep, it's at Rolling Embers in New Buffalo, Michigan.
Rolling Embers, there you go.
Soon to be everywhere. Thank you.
Right.
This has been a great conversation. I look forward to talking with you again soon. And good luck in all your endeavors there in Missouri.
Thank you, brother. Good luck to you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Bye.
Well, that covers the latest developments from Missouri's cannabis ecosystem. As we've discussed, the success of the social equity mandate hinges on more than just winning a license. It depends on sustainable business partnerships and a regulatory environment that allows smaller players to compete with the giants. With the Round 3 microbusiness lottery on the horizon and a major ballot decision potentially shifting the entire market structure later this year, the landscape is far from settled. If you found this information valuable, please like, subscribe, and definitely leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify to help us out. We'll continue to track the vendors and operators who are navigating these challenges in real time. Stay informed, stay compliant, and we'll see you in the next episode.